What is the most effective personal strategy against porn addiction?
Wow, what a question. The most effective personal strategy against porn addiction. Is that what it was?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I think the first answer that I would say is that that will vary depending on the individual, number one. There are so many things that are going to be a source of strength for a given individual, and it will vary. You know, there are so many different aspects of that. But maybe I'll give you a couple of examples of things that can be a huge source of personal strength. One that I find very important for clients is the idea that we can learn how to accept ourselves for who we are, imperfections and all. I think it's very easy to get caught in the cycle of shame when it comes to addiction. In fact, that's really, we call pornography the perfect poison. The perfect poison for keeping the addiction to pornography going, in most cases, is shame. And so, because shame is such a very profound human emotion, among the deepest emotions that we can possibly feel, it's so profound that it can detract us from our goals. It can help us to, or I shouldn't say help, but it can cause us to feel hopeless, unmotivated. It can encourage us to remain in a state of, I guess what we'd call lack of change, or homeostasis is the therapeutic term for that, where we just stay in that cycle because we don't believe we can ever break free from that. So I think one of the strongest elements that is involved is a personal strategy for overcoming pornography addiction, and you can generalize that to other forms of addictions and other mental health issues as well, is that idea of shame. We contrast the shame idea with guilt. Now, initially one might think, well, shame and guilt are essentially the same thing, the same emotion. And there are some similarities in terms of how you feel. You feel badly, right? You feel something negative in terms of a behavior. But while shame, as I just said, encourages hopelessness, self-doubt, a lack of motivation, even a lack of responsibility, on the other hand, guilt can actually be a helpful feeling, because while we recognize something is unwanted and is as a negative in our life, we also believe that we can change. And so the belief in the ability to change can be very powerful. It can be very encouraging. It can be very hopeful. And my belief is that the reason why you're watching this today is because you want to believe that it's possible to overcome some of these challenges in life. And I'm here to tell you that it's very possible. There are many people who have experienced wonderful changes in their lives, have found great peace because of a personal strategy like simply working on the difference between shame and guilt. I'm going to work on not shaming myself, not telling myself I'm such a terrible person for what I'm doing, but instead acknowledging I want to make a change, acknowledging the reality of an unwanted behavior, and simply making a decision that it's not going to hold us back, that we're going to be able to move forward. Now, that doesn't make it easy. Certainly, there are steps along the way, and recovery is a process. It's something that is long term. In fact, most would consider that recovery in itself is a lifelong process of managing a behavior. There's no official graduation from a certain kind of behavior, especially when it comes to a sexual addiction, because the sexual drive within us is such a human experience. It's a natural human instinct. It doesn't go away. It's not meant to go away. And how grateful we are for it. But we learn to manage that, and that is definitely a big part of the recovery aspect. So I think to answer the question, personal strategy that's very effective regarding combating an addiction to pornography, I think working really hard to see the difference between shame and guilt, and allowing yourself the chance to feel good about yourself and your prospect at being able to make a recovery and move forward is a huge part of that. I guess I would add too that another really good strategy is to have good support in place. You know that it's going to be a road that takes a while to travel on. And so knowing that it's a process, it's not just a step, you can have, for example, a spouse, a significant other, a loved one, family members like siblings or parents, mentors, people who are important in your life, such as a religious or ecclesiastical leader, that type of thing. Those supportive people around you can form a very powerful network of people who you trust and who you can open up to, and they can reinforce, again, that sense of progress, that sense of there's hope for me, there's a fighting chance for me to do this and to find greater peace and happiness in my life. So those are a couple of initial thoughts that I have on some very important personal strategies for overcoming that. And you can also talk about other things like recognizing and managing triggers as another very important element. Recognizing the environments in which we can find ourselves where triggers are more likely, where the desire to act out in that sexual behavior that's unwanted, viewing pornography or masturbation, those kinds of things can happen in certain situations more often than in others. And so recognizing a situation, for example, being really bored, being lonely, feeling a lot of stress, feeling overwhelmed and frustrated with things in life, those kinds of emotions can definitely lead to a greater challenge of trying to battle with that addiction. And so knowing that those are a very likely challenging environment to be in or emotion to feel can help us to say, okay, I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to know, this is a challenge. I'm feeling lonely. What can I do to address feeling lonely right now? If I'm bored, what can I do with that? How can I empower myself to not be so susceptible in this moment, knowing that it's likely to be a bigger challenge for me. So those are a few ideas for you. Hopefully I answered that question for you.
One of the things that I had a lot of people say is they get out and they start doing other things. They think about other people. They help other people, and that helps them to focus on, the recovery process in a way that it's not the ultimate focus. And that's been tremendously successful for a lot of people. What's that?
Sorry, Tony. I was just going to add to that the idea of, like you mentioned, service and so forth. I would add that often when we work with people on addiction recovery, interestingly enough, our sessions, our work is not 100% focused on the addiction. We talk a lot about other areas of life and service to other people, working to accomplish career goals, develop life skills. Things like that are also relationship building and relationship enhancement. Those things are also part of what we talk about because you're right, Tony, as you just said, there are other things that can help to strengthen us in addition to the actual focus on the addiction.